Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be joined by our Deputy Mayor, Paul Quander, our Chief of Police, Cathy Lanier, by other members of the MPD, and of course by Councilmember Jim Graham, who represents Ward 1. The shooting earlier this month at the International House of Pancakes in Columbia Heights was one of a string of violent crimes that appear to have targeted the district's, and I underscore up here, the district's LGBT community. And these incidents have caused, obviously, all of us deep concern. As I said, in the immediate wake of these attacks, while all crime obviously is horrific, crimes that target victims because of their ethnic background, sexual orientation, faith, or other identifying characteristics are especially insidious and destructive to the fabric of community life. Hate crimes are especially troubling because they have special power to instill fear in a particular community or group. As I said at the time, crimes of this nature cannot and will not be tolerated in the District of Columbia because all of our residents have the right to walk our streets free of the fear they will be targeted simply because of who they are, whom they love, or the way they choose to worship. Our residents believe this as well. This was evidenced last week when hundreds of people gathered at that same IHOP for a silent walk to send a strong message to the attackers that the people of this city will not tolerate this kind of dastardly violence against our LGBT residents or any other group in the District of Columbia or any other person in the District of Columbia. Today, I'm pleased to announce that Chief Cathy Lanier and the Metropolitan Police have arrested a suspect in the IHOP shooting. Chief Lanier will provide the details, but I just want to take a moment to express my appreciation to her and the team at MPD, which continues to work in such an effective and unflagging way on behalf of the people of the District of Columbia. So let's hear from Chief Lanier, then we'll hear from Deputy Mayor Quander, and then I'll ask Councilmember Graham if he will come up and speak as well. Chief? Oh, excuse me. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, sir. I've been speaking with the detectives on this case, obviously daily, and I want to commend them. This case was a lot of work. They worked around the clock. I know some of the detectives involved in this and the supervisors went long stretches without sleep to bring this case to closure. So I just want to make sure they are commended for their work as with the leadership here of our investigations bureau. This morning we made an arrest closing the case from the IHOP, the arrest of 27-year-old LaShawn Carson. You know, I try to reassure the community when this crime first happened and getting my daily briefings that we were working diligently on bringing the person responsible to closure. I just want to reiterate that it's often difficult. Many times we have a good idea in the very beginning who a suspect is, but before we can bring charges, if we're going to bring charges that are appropriate and that'll carry us through court, we have to do some work up front. And so taking a few days to make sure that work is done and done well so that when the charges are brought, they stand, takes us a little time. And I appreciate the community's patience because I know this is a crime that all of us wanted to have solved immediately. So I will say, you know, going forward, this is now in the hands of the justice system. It will go from the prosecutors, continue through the courts, and at the end of the day, there'll be a determination as to whether the hate crimes penalty will be enacted in this case or not. But again, I appreciate everyone's patience. There was a lot of work to be done in this case, and the detectives did an outstanding job. And you know, I think this should help the members of our community realize that we work hard to close cases, regardless of who our victim is, and we'll continue to do so. So thanks for all the support we did get from the community and for the hard work of the detectives.
Thank you, Chief. Paul?
I too want to thank the community for their support and their input. A case like this calls to bear all the resources that we have from a law enforcement community and from the residents of the District of Columbia. So I want to thank the community members who demonstrated their concern demonstrated their fears, demonstrated their commitment that activities that call into question a person's ethnic background, who they choose to love, who they or where they worship, that is just not going to be condoned or tolerated in this city or anywhere in this country. So I want to thank the community for stepping forward, providing information, and assisting the members of the Metropolitan Police Department as they brought this matter to closure. Thank you.
Jim?
What a relief. What a relief this is. I mean, number one, I want to congratulate Cathy Lanier, our Chief of Police, and you, Mr. Mayor, and everyone who brought about this result. It's a relief because this was a horrendous hate crime that singled out somebody on the basis of a perception, and that's what always this is, a perception that they belong to a particular group. But in addition, this was an insane crime. I mean, the people who were having breakfast at IHOP, 6 a.m. or so, the last thing in the world one would ever expect would be to have someone shot for brushing up against another person. The fact of the matter is that Columbia Heights is a great place to live. It's a great place to shop. It's a great place to eat. We're very happy that IHOP is here. This could have happened anywhere, anytime. But this insane act happened there, and having this put to rest is so very important for all of the communities I represent. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, we'll now be happy to take any questions that you may have. Yes, if you could identify yourself for the record here too.
Eric Tucker with the Associated Press. Chief, you mentioned the hard work that went into this. Can you talk a little bit more about how it was for the detective to identify this subject?
No. There's very little I can say. I mean, what I can say is that there was a lot of work that had to go into this, that it was the detective, I spoke with the detective that actually was working on the case, partner, spoke with a detective supervisor, and really a tremendous amount of work to get us where we are today. Every case is a lot of work, but they went above and beyond, and in this case, to pull this together. I can't talk about the specifics because I don't want to do anything to jeopardize this case going forward. But believe me, I think as time goes on, all of the facts will come out, but the detectives did a tremendous job.
We have Patrick.
Chief, obviously there's been a lot of talk of hate crimes here at this press conference, but as of right now, has the suspect been charged with a hate crime?
There's no such charge as hate crime, and that's really where the confusion usually is. What the hate crime statute does is it allows for an enhanced penalty for persons who are found to be convicted of committing a crime that is motivated by hate. So that will come later, but it's now in the hands of the justice system. So we'll see how that goes as we go on.
Evidence, when you guys put all this together to suggest that that's what's going to happen?
Well, that's what the judicial process is for. I can't make assumptions on the outcome of the case. I think that, just because everybody knows that in the beginning of this whole incident, before this incident happened, there was some epithets that were used by people involved in this group. All of those things will be considered going forward as to whether they fall into the enhanced penalty for the statute.
Feel comfortable with the people up there talking about this as a hate crime?
Well, I feel comfortable that for me as the police chief that knows the process of how we arrested somebody and what we charged them with, is that there is no statute for a charge to be placed as a hate crime, and the prosecutors and the judicial system will answer that question ultimately in the end.
And I think people were careful to say that there was the perception of a hate crime. The facts will be determined during the judicial process, and of course that will be, again, determined at the end of that judicial process.
Chief, can you tell us a little bit, Chief, about the suspect, Sean Carson? Tell us what you know about the suspect.
The only thing I can tell you right now is a 27-year-old female from Washington, D.C., and really there's not much more I can give you beyond that.
Walk us through what happened at the IHOP that day in as much detail as you feel comfortable doing to the best of that warning. What happened? What precipitated this? What have you figured out?
I mean, I don't think I can tell you any of that. I would defer to the investigative folks.
Yeah, I think like the chief says, as the chief stated, right now, I'm sorry, I'm Commander George Cusick with the Criminal Investigations Division of Metropolitan Police Department. Right now, the investigation really is still is still ongoing. We're working with the U.S. attorneys at this point, although we've made an arrest. We're still in the process of, we'll continue to interview people and, sort out through the rest of the facts that we have in the case. But what we can just say is that there was what started as a verbal confrontation, then escalated to a physical confrontation between two groups, and at some point, Ms. Carson had a gun and shot the victim in this case. But the victim is going to be okay at this point, but again, there's about all the details I can release right now.
Was it caught on videotape?
I'm not really going to discuss the evidence at this point and what was caught. I mean, they do have video there, but I can't say exactly what the videotape captured.
Hi, Commander, is the victim a female or a male?
The victim in this case is an adult male.
Who identifies as a female? That's what you make sure.
No, not necessarily. I don't think that's the case.
There had been some talk earlier about whether or not this was part of a pattern or a string of events. Is there any additional information that indicates whether or not this is part of a string of events?
We do not have any evidence to believe that this incident here is related to any other instance at all, no.
Commander, are there any other updates then for the one off, the beating on Georgia Avenue, and then the one over, I think it's Mount Olivet? I guess they were all sort of reported at the same time. I know they all sort of made headlines at that time. Is there anything we can tell the public about those other two?
We have no reason to believe these are related to each other. They're still open cases. Detectives are continuing to follow up on them. I don't have any details to talk about right now.
Anticipate anyone else besides Ms. Carson facing charges at this point, or is she the sole suspect in this investigation?
Well, I can't discuss that right now. There were other people with her. Whether or not anyone else will face charges right now, is not yet determined.
Commander, you say that there were some epithets that were thrown around. You say that there were some epithets that were thrown around. Can you say definitively that the reason this victim was targeted was because he is gay or LGBT of any kind?
No, we said that right now the investigation is continuing, and that's part of the rest of the process, and it will be determined. Ultimately, all the facts of the case will be presented at this point to a grand jury, and we'll go on from there. But I can't say definitively that that's the case.
Councilmember Graham, could you perhaps address this issue of whether or not you view this incident as part of a significantly larger issue, whether or not it's related to specific incidents?
Well, it is part of a much larger issue, which is involved in every hate crime, which is the perception that someone is a member of a particular group, and for that reason they should be harmed or injured or attacked. And, this is an ongoing problem here and everywhere else in terms of getting people to understand that that is not tolerable in any organized society, and that we're not tolerating it here in the District of Columbia. I do believe that we're making progress. I do believe that the police department, certainly our mayor, and everybody involved here, have a different level of consciousness than we did years ago. And so and of course, the penalties are enhanced, the laws are tougher, and so we are making progress.
I understand that the police have different restrictions on exactly what they feel like they can say. Could you talk to us a little bit about what you know about this case and why you feel like it's a hate crime?
Well, I think it's, at the time, we were all informed in various ways that there were statements made which related to the perceived sexual orientation of some of the people who were in the restaurant at the time. As to how this all comes out in terms of judicial proof is another matter.
I have a question actually about the victim, just because it becomes to be a sensitive issue. Can we describe the victim as gay or transgender? Because that tends to be a problem when we report these facts.
It is a sensitive issue, and at different times we have victims who don't want us to disclose their preference, and I think we have to respect that. I mean, unless a victim wants us to disclose, we're not going to, because I don't think that's anybody's business but the victim's, unless the victim wants it to be public. And I don't mean to be rude, but we get a lot of pushes for us to describe that, and really it's none of our business or anybody else's business. If it comes into play as a part of this crime as is bias motivated down the road, then that also could be just perception and may not have been part of an accurate description of the victim anyway. So that's why we're very sensitive about that and trying to respect our victims as much as respect the general community on what information we can share. So I'm sorry, I can't give you better than that, Jen.
And at this stage, what we know is somebody was shot.
Correct.
But Chief, you're calling it a hate crime though, and we're